Hello everyone, this is Steven from the Even Steven channel, and today I have a fun topic I want to discuss. We're going to discuss what is the best home defense gun. And more specifically, what is the best home defense gun for you? You personally. I'm not going to say, oh, it's HKP30. By the way, this is empty. I'm not going to say it's a Glock, I'm going to say it's an AR-15, I'm going to say which brand AR-15. I'm going to maybe propose some things for you to consider when you choose your home defense gun, and so maybe you can make a better choice. The idea is, you can have one gun tucked away that if anything happens, you're going to get that gun out and you're going to use it to defend yourself and your property. So what do you choose? Well, I feel like there are a lot of considerations you need to think about. Number one, where do you live? Where do you live? Do you live in an apartment? Do you live in a townhouse? Do you live in a separated house? Do you live in a condo? Do you live, where do you live? And only where do you live, how much space do you have? Do you have just an apartment where it's like 3 or 4 rooms and that's all you got to protect? Do you have a ranch and you have several acres of land that you have to protect and patrol? And when you have something going from an extreme like an apartment with a couple rooms to just an expansive property, your decisions might change. If you have a big piece of property you got to protect, you might carry around a rifle, a nice AR-15, like this one. This is my HD Defense AR-15. I like it. I still like it. I'm gonna keep it. This particular one's wearing iron sights. But we got a nice sling, so in case I have to sling it on myself, if I'm going to carry it around and do other things to free my hands, I can sling it up. I got a weapon light on here. I could throw in this 30-round mag. Well, this is a 10-round magazine. But imagine if you have a 30-round magazine you throw in there. 30 rounds of 5.56 on tap. You're not doing, doing pretty good. But if you live in an apartment, there's a lot of people around. Maybe a 5.56 caliber rifle that could very easily go through walls might not be the best choice. Another thing to consider is who is going to use this firearm. Now, in my particular example, I'm going to move this around a little bit. In my particular example, I'm the only person who's going to be using my firearm, or in a defensive situation in my household, I'm the only one who's going to be using the firearm. I have 2 children. They're not going to be using it. I have a wife. I've told her I don't think she's properly trained enough. I guess I'm technically qualified enough to be training her. However, it's hard for us to both go to the range and someone to watch our kids. So that might be my fault. But getting back to the topic, the only person qualified to be using a firearm in a defensive situation in my home is me. So I only consider me. But what if it's you and your wife? You and your husband, you and your children, older children, you and your friend, whatever. You have to consider every single person who's going to be using that firearm, and that might influence your choice. Now, what kind of firearm could you pick? And I've touched on, you could use a rifle. Like I said, nice, accurate. If you're going to get a rifle, you might as well get a semi-automatic rifle. If you're going to get a semi-automatic rifle, you might as well get an AR-15. This particular one is from HD Defense, which is a company in Pennsylvania. Is my alarm going off? Sorry. My phone alarm went off. But most manufacturers make quality guns, quality rifles. Smith & Wesson, Ruger, Springfield Armory. There's also the bigger names like BCM, Daniel Defense. But if you spend around $1,000 for an AR-15, you can get a pretty nice thing. Again, if you want to go a little cheaper, you can get from Smith & Wesson or Ruger. If you want to go a little higher, you can go Daniel Defense, BCM. There's a wide variety of choices. And again, an AR-15 and 5.56 made by a quality manufacturer is hard to beat. Now, what about a shotgun? Now, I'm not going to pull a shotgun on the table, but instead of shooting a rifle that's shooting one very precise bullet, you have a shotgun that's throwing out a big wide spread of pellets. And I'm not particularly adverse to using a shotgun for home defense. I know that's not in vogue. It used to be the thing, and now people are like, oh, you can't use a shotgun for home defense. That's terrible. I'm not particularly adverse to using a shotgun for home defense, but just keep in mind it's going to put a big and expanding pattern out, and shotguns don't hold a ton of rounds. So keep in mind. I'm not averse to using a shotgun. I personally wouldn't choose one, but that's something you might choose. What about something like a pistol caliber carbine? Again, I'm not going to pull one out. I really don't have one to show, but something like a Ruger PC carbine or any other 9mm 40 or 45 caliber rifle. That's a good choice. Honestly, a PCC would probably be a very good overall choice, because particularly if you live in a place where you have a little more confined, a little more populated, a 9mm cartridge might be a little bit less likely to penetrate through walls than something like a 5.56. And if I had to just give a blanket statement of which PCC to use, the Ruger PC carbine is a pretty good gun for the money. Now, what about revolvers? As much as I love revolvers, and I do, I'm not the biggest revolver fan for home defense. I haven't really specifically said it, but I really like it when any home defense firearm has a light on it. That's always a nice touch. Revolvers tend not to have accessory rails. Some of them do. However, I think it's a really, really nice benefit if you can get a weapon light on a firearm, because that way it's attached. Keep in mind that it's going to be nighttime about 50% of the time, averaging out between winter and summer. So half the time is going to be dark, half the time is going to be light. So you got to prepare for that half the time when it's dark out, and having a dedicated weapon light on your firearm is a really good idea. This particular one is a Smith & Wesson 627, so you would have 8 shots of .357 Magnum. And if there was a gun I was going to recommend for home defense, it would be some kind of Smith & Wesson 627 revolver. They have that T8, which is very expensive. That one you could put an accessory rail on, that one you put a weapon light on. That's pretty cool. Very expensive. I think the average person isn't going to get a revolver for home defense, although, yeah, you could. My only gripe is capacity tends to be a little bit limited, and you can't really attach a weapon light. So if you've watched any of my videos, you know I'm a handgun guy. So if my go-to is going to be some kind of 9mm compact, like this is a striker-fired Glock 19, using some kind of Inforce light that I think people like to make fun of, although it's always worked well for me. Or something like a full-size P30L with the TLR1 weapon light, which this is not working. I think the batteries are down on this one. I gotta have to check that out. This wasn't working before. I gotta check my batteries. Good point. Check your batteries. This was working last week when I checked it. Something might be wrong with this particular TLR1. I've had this for a very long time. I've had this for over a decade. And either the battery needs to be changed or something might be wrong with this, because it was working before and now it's not. But something like a big, full-size 9mm handgun is a good choice as well. Now keep in mind, if you use a rifle or a shotgun, that's, if it's not obvious, a two-handed weapon. Something like a handgun, by its very nature of being called a handgun, is something you can hold with one hand. And you can shoot with one hand. Not particularly well, but better than a rifle or better than a shotgun. And if you have one hand holding the gun, you can have another hand doing something else. You could have a hand holding a magazine. You could have a hand opening a door. You could have a hand holding or guiding a child. Keep in mind that if you have a house that has other people in it, you might have to corral, for lack of a better term. You might have to move people, assist moving people, and a free hand goes a long way. So personally, for me, living in a townhouse with multiple family members, I'm going to go for some kind of handgun, like an HK-P30L, or a Glock 19, or really any handgun made by any competent manufacturer. Beretta, SIG, H&K, Smith & Wesson, Walther, They all make great guns, and unless you go out and buy something extremely cheap or I'll say that just wasn't working to begin with, you really should be fine. Now keep in mind, any kind of home defense firearm that you get is one that everyone who's going to be expected to use it should be proficient with. Should be practiced with. If you don't just go out, buy a new gun. I'm going to use this. Don't just go out, buy an HKP-30, load up the magazine, and then never use it. Because number one, you're not going to be very good with it. And number two, maybe it doesn't work well. Maybe your flashlight doesn't work well. Maybe your flashlight doesn't work at all. I gotta check that. Yeah. So, be proficient. Test it out. Test it out with the ammo that you're going to use. If you're going to use some kind of hollow point ammo, like I guess I would recommend Hornady Critical Duty with my limited experience. Hornady Critical Duty seems to work well for me. Test it out. Practice with it. Shoot it every once in a while and make sure it's working well. And whatever your home defense gun is, just, you got to be practiced with it. Now, any other considerations? Well, there is the idea of multiple firearms for home defense. I've seen videos, interesting videos. What's that guy? Musad? Ayobi? Oh, man. I don't want to butcher his name. But I've seen other videos talk about the idea of using multiple firearms for home defense. That maybe in your bedroom you have like a shotgun and a handgun. And if for whatever reason you have to retreat into your bedroom, then the shotgun comes out. But if you're just going about, looking around, seeing what's going on, maybe take the handgun. But again, if you have to retreat into your bedroom and defend your bedroom, then maybe the shotgun comes out. So that's a consideration. And again, it's all going to depend on you, who's going to use the gun, where you live, all other factors you have to consider yourself. No two people are going to have the same situation. And even two people in the same situations might choose different things that are just perfectly fine. If you choose an HK, you choose a Glock, they're both going to work equally well. And at this point, I don't think I have anything more to add to the conversation at this time. I would like some comments. I would like, maybe talk about what you use, what your reasoning was. Sometimes people don't have a choice. Some people are just like, well, this is the gun I inherited. Or this is the gun I have. And that happens too. That happens. So I would like some comments. Let me know what you chose for your home defense gun, if you have. If you think there's something that I fundamentally got wrong, I'd like to hear it. I'm not perfect. I wouldn't say an expert in handguns, but I have a certain amount of expertise. I just said it twice. I have a certain amount of proficiency with handguns that I think qualifies me to be able to talk about these things. But rifles and shotguns I don't know quite as much about, and maybe I missed something. So this is Steven from the Even Steven channel. Please don't like, share, and subscribe. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I will see you next time. Thank you, and goodbye.